Jalen Hurts had quite the year 2 seasons ago. He was pretty unanimously like the second choice for MVP. Pretty much everyone had Mahomes at 1 and Hurts at 2. He also ended the year second in Super Bowl with the Chiefs winning the Super Bowl over Jalen Hurts. So Hurts can't be a huge fan of Mahomes, I would assume, given how that year went. But last year went a lot worse, as the Eagles at times had the 1 seed when they were, I believe it was like 11-1, but kind of went on a tailspin towards the end of the year. And of course, when you're a quarterback, when things go well, you're going to get all the credit. When things go poorly, you're going to get all the blame. But I don't know how much of the blame was really his fault. And that's what I want to talk about in this video. Is just talk about, so how good is he really? For example, something like this, where this is honestly a lot of what we saw in the postseason game, which is kind of what I want to start off talking about. Once things got off the rails, which was late in the year, why did they get off the rails? The defense was bad all year, but the offense had their injuries. I mean, Devonta Smith was a good wide receiver, but they lost A.J. Brown and didn't really have a lot of guys who could step up. Like, there's a lot of stuff like this, where it's a zone coverage play on a 3rd and 6. You see where Hurts wants to go with the football. And worth noting, I think we all kind of view this game as a blowout, and it felt like a blowout throughout. But Tampa Bay had some drop passes and some mistakes that still kept the Eagles in it, only down 7 with 2 minutes left in the 3rd quarter. When this play begins, though, Hurts would take the snap, looks down the field, and again, doesn't love what he sees. I was in the stands in this game watching a lot of times Hurts look down the field and just they're not being an option. And it's like, do you just throw up a jump ball or do you try to make something happen? This time, Hurts is going to try and make something happen. He's going to scramble out and again, looks down the field, still doesn't love what he sees, and isn't really outside the box at this point. So not a very tough situation here. I would say he probably could have done a better job than what he does here of getting, making sure there isn't a safety. That was ruled a safety. It was ruled grounding in the end zone, which is a safety. So certainly there were some critiques to be had in this playoff game, but it largely felt like he was, maybe failing a test, but it was a test that was with really difficult questions and answers, and it's kind of understandable to not pass with flying colors. But this is another example of what we kind of started to see more and more as, there was also injuries to the offensive line, so you would see stuff like this. When this play begins, Hurts is going to run a play action, but, the Giants just sent pressure, and part of what they did too is once teams kind of realized that playing man coverage against the Eagles was the preferred strategy, they started blitzing a lot. And 2 years ago, Hurts was lethal against the blitz, and even now, he's doing a pretty good job. Gets outside the pocket, is looking downfield. There's just not a place to go with the football. So he does the right thing here. He throws the football away, but again, that's going to hurt your box score numbers, right? Even if it's the correct play because, you weren't able to make anything happen. And then there were plays like this, where it's going to be a one-on-one matchup towards the bottom of the screen. So that's the situation. Hey, one-on-one shot down the field. Safety is going to be kind of closer towards the top of the screen, as that is where A.J. Brown is lined up towards. So when Hurts takes the snap, he's going to look off the safety and then fires down the field. There's a window right here. It's not a huge window, but there is a window. And honestly, this is a really good throw that just wasn't able to be complete. Like, again, if we're doing the test analogy, he had to answer some really tough questions and honestly got really close and maybe even answered a few right that the grader marked wrong accidentally or something like that. It's not a great analogy, but you get what I'm saying. He did a pretty good job on a lot of these plays, and it just wasn't enough due to the situation he kind of got put in towards the end of the year. Because, going over to, Arizona, when, it's, not a, great defense that he's going up against, with all due respect to the Arizona Cardinals. It's man coverage. You see the route that he wants to look towards right here. He's going to take the snap. It's actually Julio Jones's route where he fires down the field, and you see there's a window. It's not like a wide open window or anything, but what Hurts kind of did at such a high level 2 years ago was just there would be a window, he'd hit the window. He'd make the correct read and get the ball to the right spot so consistently. That's what he does here, and they're able to get a touchdown. And it's like when you pair that consistency with his good playmaking ability, usually you would get some really good football. But last year, just when these opportunities dried up a little bit, it made it look worse. That's what I saw when I watched the film. There was also something like this, where the way this is going to work, it's going to be zone coverage that the Arizona Cardinals are in on a 3rd down and 2. That is the concept that the Philadelphia Eagles are running, and Hurts doing what Hurts typically does is he's reading this play well, which is such an underrated aspect of football. It's just being able to quickly figure out where you should go with the football, which Hurts has pretty much always done, even going back to college. That's the route he wants to look towards, which makes sense. On paper, this is one that definitely can work. And when Hurts takes the snap, it also helps that it's A.J. Brown, but this is honestly pretty good defense by Arizona. This is not a wide open window, but I think the timing that Hurts can, really show off on some of these plays is what makes him special. I mean, you look at the ball, it's already almost there. So before the Arizona defender can get to Brown, Brown is able to make the grab, and A.J. Brown is a great player. Having A.J. Brown, really helps out a lot, but also he helps out A.J. Brown a lot. A.J. Brown wasn't this guy in Tennessee. He was really good in Tennessee, but he wasn't quite this. I mean, they have really good chemistry, and, I think that in the playoffs once, and in that Giants game, once Brown got hurt, it just wasn't, it wasn't the same. I do think Jalen Hurts is really good, and I think that the only real, criticism from him last year was it was more so just you didn't make a miracle happen being able to win with Matt Patricia. It's okay, listen, the list of guys who have won with Matt Patricia is Tom Brady, and that's it. That's the entire list. So I don't think it's fully fair to criticize that. And even in that scenario, Patricia, there was Bill Belichick there, probably helped out a little bit, right? So, in general, I think that the defense was horrible. The offense was good enough to still make some of these plays work. I think Hurts did a lot of really good stuff. And then in the past couple of games, the situation wasn't as good, and he wasn't as good because of it. I do think that maybe it's fair to say that, 2 years ago, his situation was so good, it probably inflated some numbers, and he probably wasn't actually the second best quarterback in football, despite having the second best season out of quarterbacks in football. I would agree with that. I think that's reasonable. And I don't have him as my number 2 quarterback, but I still have him as a top 10 quarterback because when I watched the film, I really do see a lot more good than bad, and even the bad tends to be a lot more him trying to fit a ball through a tight window because it's the 10th play in a row where there's been tight windows, and at a certain point you have to start pushing the ball down the field, and then it gets intercepted and everyone criticizes him. Like that's what I've seen more of. And I think for the Eagles, really an effort they should be making, they've done some stuff, I think they should be making more of, is try not to be so A.J. Brown dependent. Like, they've added Saquon Barkley, who isn't a receiver, but maybe can help out in that area. But it does feel like, listen, Devonta Smith and Dallas Goedert are also both really good players, but it does feel like, losing A.J. Brown, it takes a big hit on that team, which, again, losing a top 10 wide receiver is going to hurt most teams. Of course, that makes sense, but I do think maybe adding some depth there could help out, because A.J. Brown, for all his pros, is someone who will, miss a game or two, it feels like, over the years, with the exception of 2 years ago, which, might have been part of why Hurts had his best year that year. So I don't know. Again, I'm not saying that it was all just losing A.J. Brown was the only part of his issues. I'm mostly saying I don't think his issues really were that big of a deal and were overblown. And most of the times when he played poorly, it was more so there wasn't an option to go with the football. But yeah, that's what I think about all of it. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from y'all. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.